Okay, now we'll talk about the impulse control disorders. And really, they're the impulse control disorders not classified elsewhere, because there are several other disorders that involve some problems with impulse control. Substance use disorders, obsessive compulsive disorder. But these are disorders that are kind of like that, where there's an impulse to do something and you have a hard time controlling it, but they don't fit neatly into anxiety disorders or substance use. Start off with intermittent explosive disorder. So it involves multiple incidents of aggressive impulsivity with serious consequences, where you're hurting people, causing property damage, something like that. Um, and there's a disproportionate degree of aggressiveness. So if they're in this, so there can be something that pisses somebody off. They're in line at the checkout stand, and they see the person in front of them in the 10-item thing has 12 items. It may be okay to get a little upset and say, hey, buddy. But if you have a disproportionate degree of aggressiveness in your response, where you then have this impulse where you want to whack them in the head with your shopping basket, and you do so, that would then look more like intermittent explosive disorder. And then the aggressive episodes that we're talking about here are not better accounted for by another mental disorder, the effects of a substance, or the result of a general medical condition. So if you're being really aggressive because you're on methamphetamines, it's not intermittent explosive disorder, it's amphetamine intoxication, or just a part of the pattern of your substance abuse or substance dependence. If kind of have these angry outbursts because it's related to kind of hallucinations, it's part of a psychotic disorder, again, that better explains it. We don't add intermittent explosive disorder to it. Just kind of about people with this disorder, often people that have these episodes, and it's depending on who you read, it's pretty rare. Depending on how people ask about it in terms of surveys, you say, oh, it's less than 1% of the population to up to 7% of the population. Well, it all depends on how you phrase the questions when asking about, have you ever gotten upset where you felt like you were going to lose it? Because it's a very kind of identifiable thing. But intermittent explosive disorder is about multiple incidents. It's about a pattern of these things happening, and again, it's about the disproportionate to any kind of provocation. Because if you should ask people, if I ask you, think about, have there ever been times when you just really feel like smacking somebody? It has been more than once. Like, oh my God, I have multiple incidents of aggressive impulsivity. I have intermittent explosive disorder. No, probably not. Because if we sat down and talked about it, I'd say, well, this happened, and I was having a rough day that time already, and then this thing happened on top of that. Okay, well, once we consider the whole context, it makes sense that you got upset that time. And it can happen more than once. This is more kind of out of the bluish. So with less context, people having this impulse to really hurt somebody or hurt something. Okay, and when it happens, people often report physical symptoms during the episode. So when they have the impulse, heart rate increasing, sweating, tightness in the chest, and then afterward they are remorseful. So it's not like, yeah, I beat that guy's ass, that's awesome. It's almost this feeling like a lack of control over it and feeling guilty and bad about it. Okay. When considering this diagnosis, you have to be cognizant of potential for malingering. And again, malingering is the intentional production or false reporting of symptoms to get something good, or to get out of something. So this one is often used to get out of something. So somebody that's gotten in a fight, caused some damage, so you're in a legal setting, and they're saying, "Oh no, it's not my fault. I have intermittent explosive disorder. I couldn't control myself. I have these impulses," and it takes a savvy assessment approach to kind of parcel out whether or not it really is intermittent explosive disorder, or if the person is just kind of an aggressive person who does these kind of bad things. And the difference usually is you can identify a reason why they did it. So they beat somebody up for revenge, or because they stole their wallet, right? If they're doing that, it's not intermittent explosive disorder. They're not impulsively beating somebody up and taking their wallet. They want the wallet, and they have to use aggression to get it, right? So if they're doing those kinds of things, we're looking more at like antisocial personality disorder, right? So they're using aggression and beating people up to take things because they have no regard for the rights of others. In terms of treatment, some reports of the successful use of cognitive behavioral therapy, usually focused on increasing self-awareness, and then, like most things we'll talk about, some reports of success with antidepressants, SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and then the newer ones that also focus on norepinephrine. Again, no real reason why those drugs should work for this, but they sometimes do. Kleptomania. If they're repeatedly people that repeatedly act on the impulse to steal things that they don't need. So it's not because they're stealing bread because they're hungry, or they're going to steal it and sell it to make money. They just have the impulse to steal it. So often sometimes it's things that aren't even of significant value. Stealing a pack of gum. You don't even like gum. Just steal it because I feel this impulse to do it, and then you act on it. Right. So if you don't act on it, it's not kleptomania. So this is kind of behavioral disorder. Also, there's an increasing tension right before the theft, which keeps that in mind. Something we'll see when we talk about trichotillomania in a bit. And again, the reason for the theft wasn't because they were angry or out for vengeance, or because they were delusional or having a hallucination where they thought the alien in the store told them to take the gum. If they did that, it's not kleptomania. This is just about having that impulse. Oh, I have to steal this. Feeling tension and then stealing it, and you feel better initially anyway. Again, not better accounted for by conduct disorder, mania, or antisocial personality disorder. So with conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder, those things where we're disregarding the rights of others and it's just stealing. And so if the stealing is part of this larger pattern of disregard for the rights of others, and they're just kind of a thug, then they're not also a kleptomaniac. These are people who otherwise follow the rules, but there's this one thing that they don't follow the rule about no stealing. And then people that only steal while manic, well, then that's just a feature of their bipolar disorder. So when they're not having those mood symptoms, they don't have these impulses to steal things. It's not kleptomania. It's just mania, which is a part of bipolar disorder. In terms of treatment, again, it's a fairly rare disorder to be seen clinically. So not a lot of data about efficacy, but people usually try therapy and, like everything else, antidepressant medications. Pathological gambling. You have a persistent and recurrent maladaptive gambling behavior, which include 5 or more symptoms. So what's a maladaptive gambling behavior? That's gambling where you lose. Right? So if somebody gambles and wins better than 50% of the time, it's not pathological gambling because it's not maladaptive. But if you've ever gambled much, you'll know that you're not going to win most of the time. Otherwise, everybody would do it. Right? And that's why it's gambling, and that the house usually wins. So most gambling that is persistent and recurrent will be maladaptive. Right? Unless you're playing low stakes and just incredibly wealthy. The 5 symptoms are similar to kind of things you'd see with substance dependence, right? Where tried to quit but couldn't. An increasing amount of money. So instead of an increased amount of substance being used, an increased amount of money need to be spent. Lying about it. Broke the law to keep doing it. All those kind of things. The kind of the model of substance dependence fits pretty well with how we think about pathological gambling. And it seems to be about the rush, and it could be very kind of those endorphins when you're gambling more than it is about the money. So it's not people that are just trying to get rich. So if they win big, they'll stop gambling because they've achieved their goal of having all this money. No, it's not about the stakes. It's about chasing that high, that rush of am I going to lose, that excitement. You have to rule out that they're not manic, because again, when people that have bipolar disorders are manic, they'll engage in risky behaviors, and that's part of mania. So if they only gamble when manic, it's not pathological gambling. It's just part of their bipolar disorder. In terms of treatment, again, you have your therapy, which is typically cognitive behavioral therapy, and your antidepressant medications that are being described for everything. And then also there are 12-step programs like Gamblers Anonymous, which have shown to be helpful for some individuals, having that support group. Trichotillomania. This is a recurrent pulling out of one's hair, resulting in noticeable hair loss, which the technical term for that hair loss is alopecia. And this is a disorder that actually presents more often to dermatologists than therapists, right? They'll go to a dermatologist, or kids will be taken to a dermatologist because they have these bald spots. They're like, hey, why do they have a bald spot? And then they'll figure out eventually, oh, it's because they're pulling their hair out. There's an increased tension just before pulling or when trying to resist pulling. So here's where it has that kind of similarity to kleptomania, where there's this impulse, and it's like I feel like I need to do it, and there's a tension, sort of like anxiety, but more nebulous, more just kind of ill feeling that grows right before pulling. And then when pulling, there's pleasure, gratification, or relief, that kind of release of that tension. It's something that's not better accounted for by another disorder or general medical condition, right? So if somebody has a delusion that their hair is made up of fiber optic cables that the government's using to listen in, and that's why they're pulling their hair out, well, we're probably talking about schizophrenia or delusional disorder, not trichotillomania. It causes clinically significant distress or impairment, and in terms of the treatment, it's a pretty treatable disorder. Self-monitoring, having people monitor the amount that they hair pull, often helps reduce the amount they do it, because it's kind of a mindless disorder. It's sometimes referred to as a habit disorder. So people will do it. They won't sit down and, okay, I'm going to pull my hair now. But when they're sitting watching TV or laying in bed and just kind of not paying attention to anything, zoning out, as it were, then they'll start pulling and not thinking about it, just kind of tension. Oh, it feels good. Oh, it feels good. And they may even be doing something else, watching TV, playing on the computer, whatever, while they're hair pulling. So self-monitoring helps. Another approach is habit reversal training, which addresses the fact that it is kind of like a habit, which uses very kind of behavioral techniques based on your classical conditioning and operant conditioning principles. Just one other thing to note about trichotillomania. Potential complication, in addition to the alopecia, are hairballs, trichobezoars. Sometimes people that pull hair will then ingest it. Kind of how people chew on their nails. Some people will pull their hair and then eat it, and if they do, like a cat, they can get a hairball that will then need medical attention. So if you're treating somebody for trichotillomania, you probably want to be working in conjunction with a medical physician. Okay, that's it for the impulse control disorders not discussed elsewhere.